Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tayari.live stream. Tayari, you're about to live stream Ashawa again today. Thank you so much for always making the dates or rewatching any of our contents. This is Ashawa powered by Tayari.live. Here we talk about and give um, value regarding language, preserving the heritage, culture, and everything that really has to do with heritage preservation, basically. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Busola. I am always delighted to be your host every single time. This is Ashawa, which is an extension of our Tayari.Yoruba business. We also have Tayari, Swahili, and other languages are coming up in the closest future. All right, thank you so much for joining in again today. So, today we're going to be discussing a very interesting and very important topic, right? um, every single means that we can use as diaspora parents or as parents to help our children stay close to the culture is definitely worth employing. And if you've been following on this channel, we've been deliberately bringing tips and a lot of things that can actually help you to make your own home the hub where your children can learn the language. Of course, that is, you know, with the thoughts that you yourself also know how to speak the language and all that. I'm going to be bringing to us some tricks. Maybe I shouldn't even call them tricks. Some wisdom that we can also use for parents who feel like they themselves, they don't know how to speak. Most likely would be the next thing that I will be speaking on this live session. So today, like I said, we're going to be exploring one of the important ones that I have actually even found to be personally very, very useful. All right. So strap your belts and let's go for a jolly ride together. So, today we're going to be talking about the role of elders in language transmission. So passing down heritage, identity, and connection across generations, right? Elders, this has proven over and over and again. Another word that we could have used to replace that word elder there is mentorship. And you know that the way anything is correctly preserved is that there is a system of mentorship that allows for ideologies, that allows for thought processes, ideals to be passed on to another generation, not just waiting for them to handpick things based on how they see the elders living and all. As much as that is also good, but in systems where things are deliberately passed down to the next generation, you see that deliberate effort where there is an actual system where people come into it, and there is that responsibility laid on the people who have been in the system a longer time to deliberately walk the younger ones through the thought processes, ideologies, of whatever system it's. And the same way when it comes to language, this has proven to work. It still works. I know many families right now that we're in holiday season who will deliberately take their kids to their parents, or take their kids to their grandparents. And of course, it may look like a scheme to maybe avoid the stress of having to have been with the kid all the while and all that. But there's also a bigger benefit, which, like I said, I have personally seen this work over and over again. So before we jump right in, kindly let us know where you're joining in from. I like to always want to know what languages do you speak, and let us know your name, and I mean how all of this relates to you. So, and as we continue to have this chat, I would want you to kindly offer your own unique perspectives as well too, because this will also make the entire conversation very engaging. Some of these things that I've put here are things that are well researched. I know that they work, but I would also want to hear your unique perspective. What do you think? Do you think some of them are already obsolete? Do you think some of them are things that work best with other things, not just in isolation? So let me know what you think in the comment sections. Don't spare your words. Yeah, so that being said, let's step right in. So I was saying initially that I know right now most parents who have like direct kids would have moved their kids definitely to their parents right now because of that. I mean, let the grandma handle them or the grandpa handle them and all that, right? And of course, there's an easy affinity of the grandparents towards the grandchildren. Personally, it's a bit, I know it's a bit difficult to really understand, but I've seen this over and over and again how grandparents are so like eh, the feeling cannot be explained except you're a grandparent yourself. That strong attachments towards the grandkids, wanting to see them, hold them. It can almost even turn into, I mean, turning them into what's it called now? Into toys, something that you keep grabbing every single time. All right. But I mean, that's just on the side basically. So it has proven to be true that in language transmission from generation to generation, particularly when the middle generation does not feel directly adequate to be able to pass all of the nuances and intricacies of the language to the next generation. This has always proven to be very true. Right. And I'm going to be walking you through why it works. So, the first points that I have here, which is really the premise of our discussion today for transmitting language to um, younger generation or your kids, is use your grandparents. All right. So, why grandparents are the ultimate teachers? There are three basic things. Number one, they do this more in context over grammar, right? Meaning learning through stories, real life moments, real life events. Maybe you have a family function, for an example. She speaks, for example, Yoruba. She speaks Yoruba to the kids, not um not with respect to, there's, as much as she knows that they learn from her, but it's that's not the intention. The intention at that particular point is conversation, connection, and communication. Now remember that the grandparent already has a pre-existing emotional attachment towards your kids, so there's empathy, there is um all of that educational walls, or let me say educational rails, that are always there if it was in a classroom. You don't have that with her because there's empathy. She desires connection. As much as I know that even some grandparents even go as far as, maybe if they don't even know English, for an example, but I think for most educated grandparents, of course, are bilingual themselves as well too. So there's that convenience of switching between English and the local language for them as well too. But the point about this context over grammar is that that grammar to your kid, or the grammar to the kid, language transference happens naturally. So when I use the word naturally, I mean the environment is not synthetic, right? So because this can happen in real life moments that are not in quotes. There's a word in my mind, but I can't find it now. Maybe doctored. Yes, doctored. So this happen in moments when, you know that are not doctored. So the grandma needs something in the kitchen. And the good thing I really love about grandparents, you even notice this when, you know you're naming the child after childbirth, is that they're always careful to give the child names that speaks the culture. Always very careful. Always very careful. The new generational parents most likely will not name their child Ayodeji, um, Ayotunde, Olamilekan, and all of those wonderful names, right? um you most likely use more names that speaks the civilization that you live in. But you see, grandparents, they will insist on those names, Oluwamayomikun, Fada Iro, and all of these names, they will insist on those names, right? So in moments like that, the, the grandparents will definitely be calling the child by their name, by that local name. And then in that same safe area, there can be conversations in the local language. And of course, at moments when grandma chooses or grandpa chooses to take it a step further, maybe deliberately reading stories to them or proverbs. But really, where the real learning happens is in that natural connection that already exists with the grandparents to wanting to connect with the child. So the second thing that we have here is that, of course, there is psychological safety. There's zero judgment. One thing that grandparents are always very careful of, they're delicate about things that will mess up their connection with their grandkids. You've seen that a ton of times. Of course, if you've been around they will do everything. They will be so compliant. They are so compliant. Of course, now the downside is if they don't understand uh, that one of the big reasons why you took your children over to them is also to foster that environment where they learn the language, the Yoruba language, for an example, right? With them, if they don't understand that, they trade that off, right, at the expense of their compassion of wanting to connect and all that. But it's also an advantage, right? Because um, the grandma can, uh, of course, if that is already pre-discussed with grandma or grandpa, you can keep using the language, and then in a way that they can keep using the language, rather, in a way that they know that they are deliberately trying to help the child to also catch up. Of course, this is in a scenario where you're outside the country and your own parents who are also living there, or in scenarios, for an example, if you bring them over for an holiday, or if it's a scenario where you travel down from whatever diaspora country you're living in and then you come to your home country. All right. So this really helps. The zero judgment environment really helps to build confidence in kids, because remember, like I mentioned in our last stream about why your kids doesn't speak Yoruba, you have to always take away the shame factor if you're going to get anything across to kids. So there's also phonic purity, right? So even for us as, I don't know, should I say second generation? And I'm careful to say us right now. Um, there are certain words in the local language that you will get the best of the pronunciation from the grandparents, right? Because those words were not reserved words, they were not reserved keywords for them. They were things that they used. Because one important thing about the Yoruba culture specifically is that um, events, events and not education is what really informs the building of vocabulary, right? Unlike English. Of course, there's the point where there are words that are based on events, but there are terms that it's primarily, they're academically driven. But the way the Yoruba culture works is that most of the words in Yoruba are event based, right? Based on certain events that has happened, and then those words begin to come up, right? So um the original pronunciation, now I said that because, for an example, there is a word like, there are words in Yoruba that's the same spelling but multiple pronunciations, multiple contextual uses, right? So we have the word, for example, ogun. You can use it to mean 20, which is ogun. You can use it to mean war, which is ogun. You can use it to mean medication, which is ogun. And you can also even, actually, there's actually a local state in Nigeria that actually that's takes a name from that specific word, Ogun State, here in Nigeria. All right. So you realize that the and I honestly don't think it was deliberate, right? Because you just realize that the basis for those words was primarily because of, there are more words like that, I mean, that I would have wanted to use, but they're not just in my head right now, that are very event based. And because they were the ones that experienced those events, they know the pronunciation of those words better. So it's more pure. Like I said, for them, it's not for grandparents, it's not academic. It's something they have used over and over and over and again. All right. So keep those three. These are really one of the reasons why, you know, the grandparents are like the ultimate teachers. So you must also know that children don't just learn a language from elders, they absorb culture and a sense of belonging. Emotional memories make vocabulary stick faster than the classroom memory. Like I said, I mean, as you can see in the picture here, this actually, I mean, mirrors exactly how um what the typical grandmother or the grandfather, a Yoruba grandmother, grandfather would really love with their kids. That you know touch, come close. They like it and they love it. So that sense of emotional connection already is already an advantage, right? Because and I think for the sake of the advantage of the child as well too, once once the child does not see any um what's the word now, um sort of like a marking scheme environment around, something that is checking, did you pronounce this right, did you get this wrong, something that's trying to manage their choice of words. When I say their choice of words, like how they've pronounced the Yoruba words and all that, once they see all of those things are not there, such an environment becomes very easy for them to absorb and to learn the language. And like I said, this is something that naturally comes from grandparents because they seek unexplainable connection with the grandkids. So I mean, there's no judgments, no nothing. And the good thing about it is that from grandparents, apart from the language, they also begin to learn some things that are idiosyncratic to the specific culture. But let's speak Yoruba right now. So there are things, for an example, that are very specific to the Yoruba culture. There's, the core values, the character, how elders are treated, the O and the air choice of words. So when I say the O and the air choice of words, for the sake of someone who is watching for the first time, now in Yoruba, when you're speaking with younger folks or someone who is of um your age range, you refer to them as O O O, right? So for example, if you want to say um um you want to bathe, you say O fellowe or O fellowe, right? You want to say he's going to school, on lo sile iwe, right? So, but if you're going to be saying the same thing, but now with respect to an older person, that O will have to change to eh. So it's the way the language helps to differentiate between the 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 age range or the how elderly or how older the person we're talking about really is now. So in the same example of you are going to school, for a younger person or someone of your age range, you would say on lo silewe. But if it's an elderly person, you say mon lo silewe abi en lo silewe, right? So the choice of words at that particular point is really what introduces that discrepancy. Now I said that because it is it is really in being with elders that some of those things are observed, how the elderly people treat. Of course, there's also the part where they are aged, um they are more you know uh morally morally sensitive values that they would learn from older parents, right? From the grandparents. Well, let me say compared to, it may not always be entirely accurate, but I think there's always a flavor of those things that come from the grandparents that you may not directly get with the kid with the direct parent of the kids, right? So that's the one advantage that it really does. Like they don't just absorb the language, they absorb the culture as well too. They see how grandma treats grandpa, they see all of those things, how you know if you're probably from here in Nigeria, you see how the grand communities. When I say the grand communities, grandparents, grandpas how they are very keen about community and connecting with people, you know, because at that stage of life, you begin to see that as much as it's very imperative, to make the best of yourself while you are young, but you begin to really see, as you see them live, you begin to really see what is worth living for, right? So the culture, the community, the sense of belonging, the willingness to always want to, you know, be of help to your neighbors and all of those things are very beneficial in all honesty. As much as I know that the entire focus of this conversation is really the language, but that cultural transference is also very, very important. That also helps the child to build some moral strength as well too. Right. So um this is how we really stop, the language gap, right? So, like I said before, with elders, there's already an existing emotional connection, so it is more vibrant, it is lived. You heard me say the other time about how the words are used more with respect to events and moments instead of academic and formal. You know, as much as there's a role that plays, because I remember that even for myself, I did a bit of Yoruba in my secondary school, right? But the advantage, because this is really what we're really looking at, how best can we help, I mean, think about it, really, in all honesty, every child that goes to school has this is a work environment, like I have to try extra hard here. But when you take them away from that environment, of course, and that's the reason why most of the experiences with respect to passing knowledge to kids are always gamified, right? So that environment already spikes up interest in them, and they can pay attention longer and give themselves to it. All right. So all that being said, that environment is already naturally created, with the grandparents. It is lived, it's vibrant, it's personal. Like I said, the one without the elders, the academic formal, it works too, but the challenge again is that environment is mostly associated with um you know um is mostly associated with work. Like we need to try hard there, impress somebody is marking our pronunciation and all of those other things that really, introduces major gap. So but really, with the grandparents, that gap is already taken away. So now let's talk about scenarios where, I mean, your parents are not, or you as the parent, your parents are not in the country that you're living in, where you're working and raising your own family. Your parents are maybe, for example, in Nigeria, in Lagos, in Osun State, in whatever state basically that they're in. All right. So how do you I mean, still restore that connection between the both of them? By the way, before I continue with building video call routines that work, I want to quickly say that um, I want to know exactly how, what you think about some of these things that we're saying. So please put your suggestions, right? Put them in the comment section. Let me hear from you. Do you think some of these things are obsolete? Do you think that they are still functional in the current world that we live in? So with respect to building great, what's it called? Video call routines with elders, right? It's very important to have some of these things. So um everything that has to do with what's it called, how was school and all of that, you definitely want to make them know this is a separate environment, right? But because with kids, feelings feelings mean a lot, right? So feelings mean a lot, so it becomes very important that um in such moments you ensure that the what's it called, those in those video call moments, you talk about things that feel fun to the child. I understand it's normal, how was school, how are your teachers and all that, but yeah, maybe after those things are they are done, move away from them as quick as possible. All right. And then speak about things that the child would really be interested in. So and then Yeah, so one of the things that also makes for activity driven calls is that what's it called? You talk about things like cooking, recipe, you know, and all that. I know that singing live may feel like an overkill, but again, like I always say, for these things, until you try them, you do not know how well they will work or how well they do not work. So you give it a shot, right? So right there, while on the call, on the video call, your grandma can, again, some of these things have to be well, you know, um, well spoken of between yourself and your parent as well, if they will be very effective, right? Because like I said, the grandparents can be so invested into just wanting to connect with the child, and then they just choose what is convenient for your child, as against partnering with you to see to it that your child learns the language, right? So talk about things that will interest the child, and definitely deliberately use the language on those things. And then micro consistency, 10 minutes to 15 minutes a week, you know beat once in a month. Like I said, this thing I've said, we chose to bring this grandparent approach up because this is really about just deploying every tool that makes learning the language possible for your child and for the child. So, how this works is, you're just going to deploy every single thing. I know that it may not feel very, very convenient, but you let them know. I know a particular family that, I mean, every single weekend, every weekend, and sometimes maybe once in a while during the week, they have calls, call the grandchild, speak the local language, and it works, right? As much as the parents themselves are doing a whole lot of work as well to see to it that the child is learning. But you see that constant connection via video calls with the grandparent is also helping as well too. So those are what's it called? Micro habits that you can bring into the entire thing and all that. And then, I mean, while you're preparing, while you are, what's it called, getting set for those video calls, all right? So it doesn't have to be 5 minutes before, but I think the closer, the better. So practice three target phrases like, hello, grandma, ẹ káàsán, ṣé dáadáa ni. You understand? So you practice those ones. So maybe their name is Ayomide, for an example. Say Ayomide, all right, say hello, grandma. And then you're careful to also let them know about the intonation as well. Not hello, grandma, Sheda Dani, how are you? No. All right. So you deliberately say it with the intonation. Hello, grandma, Sheda Dani. Just practice those words. And then, of course, during the call, let the child lead with a show and tell item, something that they've learned, you know. So you tell them, grandma will be very excited, or grandpa will be very excited to know that you know this. And then, again, at the end of the day, all this has to be a deliberate, what's it called? Um, Deliberate effort between yourself and your grandmother for the kids. Of course, this really works more for younger folks and all of that. If you're dealing with a teenager, definitely a different approach to all of these things, because teenagers really want to just, you know, spend time alone and all of that. But then we'll talk about some of those ones at in a future stream, rather. So, of course, after the phone call, uh, whatever thing that you notice that grandma said that is also new for them, re-emphasize. This feels not natural, right? And I totally understand. But like I said, there's something you're aiming at. And when you're aiming at something like this, even in wanting to make the environment very conducive to learning the language, you have to be very deliberate. Very deliberate. So um you practice the greeting words in the first 3 minutes. It doesn't have to be 3 minutes. Like I said, just decide, right? Like, oh, grandma ekason and grandma grandpanko, all of those things. You just have the child say them before, the phone call, and then during the call, let the child say it. Grandma express or grandpa or grandma expresses their excitement about, their use of the words. And then by the time they also respond, so whatever they say in the post, after the call is done, you can then let the kid know that, oh, this is what grandma was saying. Do you know what that means and all of that? Again, it has to be very deliberate if you're really going to get any result from these things, right? So I said this already before that it's very what's it called, it's optional, but I think if you don't try it, you will not know if it works or not, which is the storytelling, on the video call, of course, and then, singing on the video call as well too. Like I said, these things work more with toddlers and, the younger kids, but maybe not with teenagers and older ones, because you would definitely need a separate approach for that. So that being said about that, so what happens when, because everything we have discussed right now, at least to this point, hammers on um how you can take advantage of the grandparents to help the kids to learn the language. But what happens in scenarios where, because I know not everyone, and my big shout out goes to people like that who, I mean, your parents have passed on for a while right now. They are not elderly or grandparents or something like that, you know two, two things I will recommend before I actually even go into what I have there is, first of all, you definitely also want, if there are elderly people that you are convenient with your kids being around, right? You can also take advantage of those people as well too. Elderly people, and you are convenient with your kids being around them, you can also take advantage. And I know that's a no-brainer, right? But sometimes again, we need to say these things because somebody may not even have thought about it. Like, I don't want to trouble them. But you don't know how much the grandparent also wants to be troubled to also help your kid to learn the language, right? So um think about that. Yeah, so the second thing would be that um you would use platforms, use um tech platforms like Tayari.live. Now if you are watching on YouTube, the link to Tayari.live website is just up here, so you can scan it and take a look a little bit on that very soon. So what you need to do is use it. Now that we have AI, intelligence regarding most things have been commoditized, right? So intelligence is now a commodity. It's no longer something you need to to stretch your head over to go and to get, right? There's of course, this now brings a new demand as to exactly how do you interact with the recent changes and all that. But that's the topic for another day and something else. But what I was trying to get to is, so use AI interactive stories, and that's what we really do here at Tayari.live, right? So we have Yagba for the Yoruba, we have Nyanya, the grammar, where you can have a conversation with the grammar, the AI grammar, and it's a dynamic conversation. One of these days, I'm going to be sharing what's it called, a good walkthrough. Maybe not entirely detailed because I know some features are not very available to the public, but a detailed view of exactly how Tayari.live uses all of this. But you can try it out because currently, right now on Tayari.live, you have access to free 20 minutes every single day. If that's on the free tier, you have free 20 minutes every single day to access contents, learning and all of that. So yeah, so you can explore that. It will also be of benefit, so you can have an idea. So the other thing is community circles. So connect with, I know a lot of people are so private in the days that we're in, and it is totally understandable because of the times that we're living in. Of course, even when connecting with communities, we also encourage that you are very careful about it, um, because exposing kids to just anything in the name of language learning to may be very detrimental in the long run, right? So, but it has proven to always work to have communities. Communities, they work. It works a lot because those communities come together. We already know that the entire goal behind the community is that we want our children to learn Yoruba, or we want our children to learn whatever language it might be, but of course Yoruba in this specific context, right? We are all of us on the group already know. So we can create camps. These are some of the things that we do definitely at Tayari.life, right? We have camping exercises, 5 days. We're supposed to have one recently, but we had to reschedule so that we can properly have more people participate and be a part of of that experience, because it's an amazing experience. We always give our best into it, right? So there will be camps that would be created by those, communities, and those engagements will definitely, help to bridge that gap, as well too. Now that's we're talking about in scenarios where we don't have grandmas to take advantage of, right? So these are the other alternatives that you can look at, and of course this is the most important one. Like, even when you have the grandmas, this is the most important one. This is the home immersion, right? That right there in your house, every single day, most of the things you do at home project and give social value to the language. I always like to say this over and over and again. One of the reasons why kids or teenagers don't easily incline towards learning the native language is because they don't see that knowing it has any social value. If they do, and that part really entirely leans on the parents, right? If they see your attitude towards the language, it's the same thing they will adopt. It's a no-brainer, right? I like to always say that um um nobody really learns nobody really learns anything because they are told to. Everybody learns based on realization. Now you see people start taking actions based on um realization. If they realize that this thing has value, they take action in that direction. That's exactly the same way it works. So your attitude towards the language, the intentionalness that they see that you put into making Yoruba something that is at the home front, social value. If you have neighbors, the same thing, with your neighbors and all that. If they see that every time that you meet with your neighbor, is this Yoruba kura 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 Yoruba lesham and so is Yoruba Yoruba Yoruba, they will definitely know that it has social value. They will definitely know that it has social value. As much as they will get into their own, younger communities where it's English everyone is speaking and all that, but it's already registering somewhere in their head that this language has social value. Of course, they also definitely know that if they have the opportunity to maybe travel to Nigeria, for an example, the apart from maybe the English that everyone will be speaking and all that, they know. But you need to this is not something that they need to accidentally discover. It's entirely on the parents to help the kids with this home immersion, with your daily language rituals, your signages, your music inside the house, to be clear that this is where we came from. It's very, very important. So those are the three things that um stand at the forefront when the elders are no longer, or are not a direct option, because we also need to consider that. As much as I wanted the entirety of this life to focus on how you can take advantage of grandparents as the means to easily pass language down to the kids. Now, becoming the elder your children also needs is another thing. I said this before again, but just and another way to phrase it so it could stay longer, right? So you are the bridge between past generation and the future ones. Imperfect transmission is actually better than no transmission. So keep speaking, keep recording, and keep connecting. Like I said, your attitude towards the language will be exactly what your child will inherit. It's a no-brainer. The cheapest way that kids learn is by realization. Not even just kids, everyone. Once I have a measure of realization based on the consistent patterns that I have seen that is happening in the house, and I realize, oh my goodness, this thing means a lot to mommy. This thing means a lot in the community. This thing means a lot when he and or they are speaking with the neighbors and all that. It registers, right? So that is something you also want to keep at heart, that you are the best person to help to bridge that gap, because they will have more contact with you. As much as I have encouraged on this stream that you can also take advantage of the video calls with grandma, or taking them for holidays with grandma and all that. But at the end of the day, a huge component of the work still leans on you as the parent. So pass it on. Start your family heritage language routine today. The best time to record an elder was yesterday. The second best time is today. All right. So um, put it at work, and I'm really hoping that you can practice some of these things that I've said, and I know you will see results because, like I said, I have personally seen families where some of these things are their second nature. It's normal. Every single time there is a school holiday, everybody goes to grammar. Everybody goes home to grammar to learn the language and all of that. So it's very, very important. You can also take advantage of your grandparents. I've said quite a number of things, but just to recap on some of the things that we have said is that of course, if you have parents and grandparents that your kids can travel to, um, the grandparents they already have that existing emotional connection. That emotional connection already exists to want to connect and be with the child, and you can take advantage of that as the means for the parents to also stand as a teacher to helping to pass over the language to your kids. And like I said, I also mentioned that the good thing with grandparents is that it doesn't feel academic. It's more natural. And then the use of those words are not with respect to context. It's more with respect to context and not grammar, right? So grandma needs something in the kitchen. Ayomide wa ba mi mu kini yi wa. Grandma wants to do this. Ayomide shama lo sibi. She uses those words deliberately with the child, with your child, and then in such an environment, it's easy for her to pick because she hears bamimu, bamimu, bamimu yesterday, day before yesterday. It's just normal because one thing that the brain cannot resist is repetition, continuous repetition, good repetition. The brain will always want to, that word you're repeating, what exactly does it mean? And then they can also incorporate it into their vocabulary, and then that's how this work. And we also spoke about scenarios where, what about scenarios where there's no grammar? Your parents have passed on and all that. So how do you handle such scenarios? So I mentioned that use AI, use AI interactivity. That's what we do here at Tayari.Live. And you can check the website up here. The website app at Tayari.Live. You have like 20 minutes every single day to learn. It's really an amazing what's it called, learning tool. I don't want to be the one to I don't want to sound like I'm flattering, but get into it and see it for yourself, basically. So yeah, that is all that I have for you today about preserving our heritage through elders' voices, right? The role that elders play in passing down language to kids. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you think these things are viable? Have you tried them before? You think it fails? Or do you think it's something that it works? Let me hear, let's hear from you. So give us a word, give us a like in the comment section. Also subscribe if you like to hear, you know, stuff like this about language preservation, and all of that. It would really be good to hear from you as our audience. So thank you so much. It's truly been an honor. I always love to do this, bringing tips and knowledge to you about language and heritage preservation. It's always my delight to do this every single time. So having said all that, thank you so much for joining in again for today's stream. I will see you in the next one. And in the next stream, we're going to be talking specifically to parents who don't even know how to speak the language themselves, but they are looking to passing it down to other kids, as to their own kids as well too. You want to really look out for that session. It will be amazing, bumper packed as this one was. Thank you so much, everyone. This is Ashawa by Tayari dot live, where language speaks, where heritage speaks, and we gamify every of these experiences to make sure that they stick for your child and for you as well. So thank you so much, everyone. It's a delight to have brought this session to you. I will see you in the next one.